Come to order. As we approach Veterans Day next week, we're reminded of the unique challenges service members and their families face as they serve our nation. Families spend months, if not years, apart. Service members miss birthdays and Little League games and soccer matches and recitals and anniversaries. They move frequently. Spouses have to look for new jobs again and again, preventing them from building seniority in the workplace. When I meet children of service members in Ohio, I ask where they're from, they'll often say, "I'm from everywhere." And of course, all this on top of putting their lives on the line to protect our great country. As Americans, we respect and honor service members, but some financial service companies see service members as another mark, as an opportunity to take advantage and make a quick dollar. It's reprehensible and it's as well as cynical. On top of the work they already do, service members and their families must watch out for fraudsters and identity thieves and predatory lenders and negligent credit reporting agencies. This costs members of our military more than just their money. If a bad mark shows up on a credit report, they could lose security clearance, they could lose their jobs. 80% of security clearance revocations are related to financial difficulties. Think of that. This kind of exploitation is why many of us in this committee have taken action like the Fair Debt Collection Practices for Service Members Act. Senator Warnock and I last year led that bill to protect service members by cracking down on the ways that predatory debt collectors harass and threaten service members. It passed the Senate with Senator Reid's help as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. And we continue to ask Senator Reid to work with us on all kinds of things. The VA Home Loan Awareness Act, our bipartisan bill with Senator Braun of Indiana to make sure our veterans are informed about the VA home loan benefit when they apply for the loan. Or look at the Guard VA Benefits Act, my bill with Senator Tester, who's chair of the Veterans Committee, and Senators Crapo and Lummis, members of this committee, to crack down on companies that prey on veterans and try to steal their benefits. It, of course, is one of the major reasons we created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau with a specific Office of Service Member Affairs. One of the most important things CFPB does is protect service members and veterans. In 2006, DOD released a landmark report on predatory lending, showing how shameless some of these companies are. DOD told us that Payday, Auto Title, other lenders were using deceptive techniques to draw in young service members and sell them bad loans with predatory interest rates as high as 100%. A single mother in Georgia who was active duty Air Force went to a Payday lender for $400. She eventually declared bankruptcy after paying $3,000 on that initial $400. That's more than 650% interest. It's why it's clear we needed an agency to take on these special interests to protect the bank accounts and the jobs of service members, veterans, and their families. It's exactly what CFPB is doing. Every year, tens of thousands of service members they seek out CFPB, looking for assistance, reporting complaints. CFPB, it's their duty, it's their job, it's why we created them, goes to bat for them, working to get their money back, working to fix a problem. You really can't say you support military families and veterans while trying to dismantle the CFPB. Most common issues service members complain about is credit reports. They sent in nearly 36,000 complaints just in 1 year on this to the CFPB. Inaccurate credit reports are no minor matter. They can ruin people's financial futures. For service members, that's particularly true. An inaccurate credit score can cause them, as I said earlier, to lose their clearance. And these errors often come from medical debt, which shouldn't even be. This committee has insisted with the credit agencies when they've testified, shouldn't even be on credit reports at all. I've called for medical debt to be removed from those reports. The CFPB has started to work to eliminate all medical debt from credit reports, another value to us and to service members of CFPB. Identity theft is also a major concern for service members. They report more cases of identity theft than other consumers. All their travel and moving frequently makes them an easier target. That's why credit monitoring is so important. Active duty service members are entitled to free credit monitoring services, but according to CFPB complaints, credit reporting agencies, no surprise here, keep steering service members to expensive products. Leaders fail to honor interest rate caps and other instances or reductions that service members are entitled to through the Service Members Civil Relief Act. That law guarantees service members and their families a reduction in interest rate on any pre-service loans, yet members of the Reserve and the National Guard get rate reductions for fewer than 10%. 10% of auto loans, fewer than 6% of personal loans. Their families are paying more money out of pocket than they should, 100 million more between 2007 for a decade. Military Lending Act's another important law we passed to protect service members and their families. It caps interest rates at 36% on consumer credit for military families. Earlier this year, CFPB took action against Title Max, a repeat offender, for charging nearly 3 times more than the 36% cap. They ordered Title Max to pay back $5 million to their families. Let's be clear, without CFPB, those military families would never have gotten their money back. The complaint portal at CFPB is a powerful tool for empowering military families to stand up to the companies that try to scam them. When CFPB gets a complaint, it passes immediately along to the company responsible and requests a response. No other federal agency or any organization that does that, with that level of responsiveness and efficiency, in that ability to take on big companies and shady lenders. It's how CFPB has returned almost $200 million to service members and veterans, almost $200 million. You can't say you support veterans. You can't say you support service members while you're going on the Senate floor and hanging around this town trying to tear down the CFPB. Protecting CFPB is vital to protecting military families from corporate abuse. It's exactly why Wall Street and those powerful special interests has spent more than a decade trying to kill the CFPB. These corporate interests have made it clear they'll not clean up their act on their own, and they will fight anyone who tries to make them. Military families don't have high-priced lobbyists. They have CFPB. They don't have corporate lawyers. They have CFPB. They ought to be able to count on all of us in this room. I hope today we can illustrate just how necessary military consumer protection laws and the CFPB are to the well-being of the service members and families, and how Congress can act to protect veterans, service members, and their families who put everything on the line for our country from bad actors and scams. I appreciate Senator Rounds being here. I appreciate Senator Tester, who's chair of the Veterans Committee, has been involved in so many of these issues, and Senator Reed, who chairs the Armed Services Committee and has equally been, but for a longer time than Tester and me, working on those issues. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Protecting the financial well-being of our men and women in uniform is incredibly important, not only while they are serving, but also after their service ends and they transition into civilian life. As a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, I view it as our responsibility to make certain that our service members, veterans, and their families are not preyed upon by bad actors. While everyone can agree that our service members and veterans deserve the highest protections for their sacrifice, financial safeguards should be more than blunt government mandates and general prohibitions, no matter how well-intended they may be. We will never be able to eliminate every bad actor from the market. We can try. And we must attempt to reduce heavy-handed approaches like price controls or one-size-fits-all policies, which have historically done more harm than good, reducing the access and affordability of credit. We should not lose sight of what is most important in this conversation. Number one, equipping young service members and their families with the education, guidance, and tools necessary to make decisions that will set them up for a long-term financial success. Number two, making certain that when someone leaves the service, they're taking that financial knowledge with them as they transition to civilian life. Approximately 40% of the total Department of Defense military force is 25 years or younger. Many newly enlisted service members are fresh out of high school and have received little to no financial literacy education. Improving financial literacy among our service members empowers them to take advantage of available benefits throughout the entirety of their careers, improve early financial decision-making, and better identify and avoid scams and fraudulent activity. And for our veterans, financial literacy paves a continued pathway towards success. Our veterans earn an array of benefits following their service, deservedly so. but this also makes them a high-value target for scammers and other bad actors. Congress has established and built upon financial literacy training and counseling requirements over the past 2 decades. However, we must ask ourselves if these programs are operating as effectively as they could, and if they truly are improving service members and veterans' financial wellness outcomes, or if they have become more of a check-the-box exercise to meet minimum requirements. Whether that is more engagement between the DoD and private sector financial counseling, or enhancing coordination between military banking program partners and the Office of Financial Readiness, we can always do more to provide our service members and their families with the financial education and tools to better serve them as they so valiantly serve our country. That said, federal mandates are never a silver bullet. To have a real impact, we must make sure that government programs are working with each other rather than in opposition. We must also focus on enacting common sense, tailored legislation that will stop bad actors while connecting veterans with opportunities. Speaking of common sense, Native American veterans who have the highest record of military service per capita face unique challenges that can affect their financial wellness and limit access to the benefits they have earned through their service. The VA's Native American Direct Loan, or NADL program, was established over 30 years ago to provide mortgage financing to Native American veterans living on trust land. However, this program is not meeting its full potential to improve home ownership opportunities for very deserving and qualified Native American veterans. In fact, one of my constituents died before his loan was closed after working with the VA for over 7 years. We have to do better, which is why Senator Tester and I introduced the Native American Direct Loan Improvement Act earlier this year to make certain that Native American veterans are able to access this home loan benefit that they have earned through their service. I am committed to getting this bill across the finish line, but NADL is just one example. We need to take a hard look at all programs to make certain that they are truly meeting the financial wellness needs of our service members and veterans. A holistic approach to financial education and protection of our service members enhances financial readiness and ultimately operational readiness, while allowing our service members to focus on their core mission. I look forward to hearing from each of our witnesses today about their financial issues confronting our service members, veterans, and their families, with the hope to learn from your experiences and better protect the American dream of our heroes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. I'll introduce the 3 witnesses today. Corey Titus serves as Director of Service Member Compensation and Veterans Benefits at the Military Officers Association of America. He separated from the Army in 2017 after 7 years of service. Thank you. Ms. Andia Dynison serves as the Executive Vice President of the Association of Military Banks of America. She's been an Air Force spouse for over 2 decades. Welcome. Kelly Ruska serves as the Government Relations Director at the National Military Family Association. She's a Navy spouse of 28 years. Please begin, Mr. Titus.
Chairman Brown and Senator Rounds, on behalf of the Military Officers Association of America and our 363,000 members, thank you for the opportunity to share our views on ensuring financial protections for service members, veterans, and their families. While MOAA is an organization of officers, we are not an association about officers. We recognize and carry out our responsibility as officers to support the entire uniformed services community, enlisted and officer, across all 8 branches. We advocate for world-class pay and benefits packages, but higher compensation alone is not enough. We must ensure that those who serve have the educational tools they need to maintain financial readiness, as well as protections via regulation and enforcement when necessary to mitigate the unique financial challenges they face. In the early 2000s, predatory lending was highly prevalent in the uniformed services community. A DoD report from 2006 found hundreds of thousands of service members were using predatory loan products. Other studies found service members use these products at 3 times the rate of the civilian population. One of these reports tells the story of an active duty Air Force E-4 assigned to Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. She was behind on her car and rent payments, so she obtained a $500 loan, agreeing to pay back $600 in 2 weeks. When she couldn't afford the payment, she began a borrowing spiral. Her initial $500 loan ballooned into $12,750 in a payday loan debt. The Military Coalition, or TMC, was founded more than 3 decades ago to protect and enhance service member benefits, including financial protections. The coalition includes 35 military veterans and uniformed services organizations, representing nearly 5.5 million members, working together to defend our entire community. Aware of the financial challenges facing service members in the early 2000s, TMC supported the Military Lending Act when it was passed in the NDA, and defended against attacks in the years since. MOAA continues to work closely with TMC on these important issues. With the passage of Dodd-Frank, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created and took charge of enforcing the MOAA. The CFPB's dual-pronged approach of educating and reporting through the Office of Service Member Affairs while bringing enforcement cases against predatory lending has improved the overall financial readiness and protection of our community. The OSA's annual report, which stems from the CFPB complaint database, has proven invaluable as a resource to help us understand everything that's going on in this regard. Their work goes beyond their annual product. An OSA report on the Service Member Civil Relief Act, for example, found only a fraction of activated reserve component service members were receiving interest rate reductions, costing them an estimated $100 million each year, or $100 million between 2017 and 2018. Beyond education efforts, the CFPB has taken its responsibility to enforce protections for service members, veterans, and their families seriously. Thus far, the Bureau has handled over 320,000 complaints and recovered $175 million in monetary relief through enforcement since opening its doors in 2011. Before the CFPB was created, there was no centralized location for these complaints and no cop on the beat to evaluate these unique situations. CFPB's work does not stop with helping service members. The Bureau also plays an invaluable role for our nation's veterans. The CFPB helped the veterans by suing the nation's largest student loan servicing company for falsely reporting that severely disabled veterans had defaulted on their student loans. The Bureau also worked to permanently shut down a repeat offender mortgage lender that used fake VA and FHA logos on millions of marketing letters sent to veterans, falsely implying an affiliation with the federal government. With the constitutionality of the CFPB challenged in the case before the Supreme Court, military and veteran service organizations submitted an amicus brief detailing the importance of the CFPB's work to service members and veterans. And additionally, 20 MSOs and VSOs signed a statement of support for the CFPB. The CFPB has earned this level of support from MSOs and VSOs because of their dedication and focus on our community. MOAA is gravely concerned about the potential weakening of the CFPB, and we believe that without a robust bureau, service members, veterans, and their families would lose a vital defender, and the only federal agencies mandated to safeguard their financial interests. If the Supreme Court were to unequivocally find the CFPB unconstitutional, MLA supervisory authority would return to the DoD, a department structured and equipped to defend our nation, not provide oversight of financial institutions. The task of protecting consumers, including those in uniform, should remain with the CFPB. Our nation is facing recruiting challenges that we have not seen in decades. A return to the days where unscrupulous financial predators target service members without fear of repercussions would make a bad situation worse. Maintaining and protecting the CFPB can prevent this outcome. The Bureau is good for service members, good for veterans, and helps maintain the overall all-volunteer force, and in turn helps defend our country. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Titus. Ms. Dynison, welcome. Glad you're here.
Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Rounds, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today. My name is Andrea Dynison. I'm here today to represent the Association of Military Banks of America and its 83 military member banks. I've been with AMBA for over 10 years. I came to AMBA from the Consumer Federation of America, where I led its National Military Saves campaign. Prior to that, I worked as a financial counselor on an Air Force installation. I am the spouse of an Air Force active duty officer. He's retiring at the end of this year, at which time I'll transition to serving as a spouse of a veteran. During our 10 military assignments, I developed a passion for helping airmen and their families overcome their financial challenges, which is what led me to earn the Accredited Financial Counselor designation through a Military Spouse Fellowship. In all of my experiences, I've developed not only a deep desire to help military and veteran families deal with their unique financial challenges, but a passion for helping foster public-private partnerships focused on their financial education, protection, and well-being. AMBA's military bank members have a long and proud history of supporting those who serve in America's military. Our member banks are always looking for ways to support service members, veterans, and their families. Our military bank members include banks operating on military installations and off the installation in their communities serving military and veteran families. AMBA was created in 1959 by a group of military bankers to serve as a bridge between the Department of Defense, the military services, and on-base banks. Since then, we've evolved into an organization connecting our banks to the federal agencies responsible for bank regulation and consumer protection, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the large and growing universe of military and veteran service organizations that have military and veteran financial well-being as part of their mission. I'm honored to join two of our colleagues in this space here today. I'd like to share a program that I mentioned in more detail in my written statement, the Veterans Benefits Banking Program, a great example of a private-public partnership. In 2019, the VA reached out to AMBA to help solve a growing problem. At the time, hundreds of thousands of veterans were receiving their VA monetary benefits on paper checks and prepaid debit cards. The problem was that many of these veterans experienced theft of their funds, lost or stolen checks, and fees associated with cashing checks and using the debit cards. The VA asked us to establish a way for veterans to connect with banks and credit unions that were familiar with the unique financial challenges of military service to encourage veterans to utilize direct deposit for their benefits. The result is a VA-AMBA partnership called the Veterans Benefits Banking Program, or VBBP. VBBP now has 86 bank and credit union participants, each committed to providing veterans, beneficiaries, and caregivers low to no cost checking account with no minimum balance and no monthly maintenance fees. Additionally, participating financial institutions must agree to help any veteran overcome any difficulty he or she may have in the process of opening an account. Over the past 4 years, the VBBP has been credited with banking over 285,000 veterans. We've also expanded the program to offer veterans free financial and credit counseling session through partnerships with 2 nonprofit organizations known for their support of the military and veteran communities, the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education, and the National Foundation of Credit Counseling. Next week, on Veterans Day, we will launch a newly designed financial education platform called VetSense. VetSense will offer veterans a financial journey with tools and resources tailored to their needs. The VBBP not only fosters collaboration with the public and private sector, but also works with banks and credit unions. Banks and credit unions have a long history of working together to support the military and veteran communities, and the VBBP is another great example of this. My main message today is that together, government and the private sector can do great things for the men and women who serve or have served us all. We just need to be willing to join forces, take a holistic approach, and work together to create the fabric that supports the military and veteran community in their financial wellness. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dynison. Ms. Ruska, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Brown, Senator Rounds, and distinguished members of the committee. The National Military Family Association would like to thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today about safeguarding financial protections for service members, veterans, and their families. Many people assume that service members and their families are immune to financial struggles due to their steady paychecks and affordable health care. Sadly, this is not always the case. High levels of military spouse unemployment, costs associated with military-ordered moves, and lack of nearby family support are just some of the challenges that lead military families to struggle financially. While resources exist within the military community to support families with financial challenges, shame or stigma associated with seeking help often lead families to look for help outside the gate. Prior to the enactment of the Military Lending Act in 2007, quick cash stores, used car lots, pawn shops, and title loan companies clustered around military installation gates. The net laid by these predatory lenders was extensive, and for some military families struggling financially, the draw was too great. Often, however, interest rates soared into the triple digits. Annual percentage rates of 200 and 300% were common, and in states with no rate cap, they ran as high as 700%. And then the Military Lending Act was passed. In response to the financial crisis of 2008, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act of 2010 established the Consumer Financial Protection Board, granting executive and administrative authority in the implementation of the federal consumer financial laws through rules, orders, guidance, interpretation, statements of policy, examinations, and enforcement actions. The National Military Family Association appreciates CFPB's work over the years to keep service members, veterans, and their military family consumers educated and empowered through financial literacy, ensuring supervision and enforcement of consumer financial laws, and offering a space to seek resolution through the complaint database. Much of this work is accomplished through the Office of Service Member Affairs. We are grateful for various programs and initiatives, such as the Military Family Life Cycle, which highlights many of the constant challenges that affect service members and families throughout their military career and post-military life. In September of this year, CFPB began the rulemaking process to remove medical debt from credit reporting. The proposed rules would remove medical bills from consumer credit reports, stop creditors from relying on medical bills for underwriting decisions, and stop coercive collection practices. It seems counterintuitive to think military families have issues with medical debt. Many think because military families have access to free health care, medical debt isn't a problem, but they would be wrong. In fact, military families, like their civilian counterparts, can face high medical costs, leading in some cases to medical debt. Permanent change of station moves, emergency medical situations, specialized health care, and the slow pace of TRICARE reimbursements are all reasons why military families might experience challenges with medical debt. We heard from a Marine Corps family who spent $14,000 out of pocket for a specialized hypoallergenic baby formula, which drained their savings and their retirement accounts. An Army family whose child had special needs talked to us about excessive point of service fees they accumulated for second opinions. Military families, like civilians, experience problems with medical debt. Unlike their civilian neighbors, service members with medical debt face the added threat of losing their security clearance. Our association appreciates the work CFPB has done in advance of the rulemaking process to encourage credit reporting companies not to weigh medical debt as heavily when considering creditworthiness. We also appreciate Congress passing the No Surprises Act to address surprise medical bills. All of these are steps in the right direction to protect service members, veterans, their families, and survivors, and all Americans from medical debt. While we appreciate the many steps that have been taken to safeguard military families' financial well-being, the fact remains that many service members and their families continue to face financial challenges. Rising housing costs, high child care fees, increased out-of-pocket costs for PCS moves, and ongoing obstacles to military spouse employment continue to strain military family budgets. At the same time, evolving world conflicts mean that service members must remain ready and focused on their mission. In this environment, it's more important than ever to ensure that military families have the tools and the protections they need to ensure their financial stability. The MLA and SCRA are two of these tools. The CFPB is essential to ensuring the provisions in the MLA and SCRA are enforced. We urge Congress to ensure military families continue to receive the critical protections offered by MLA, SCRA, and the CFPB. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ruska, and thank you, all three of you, for illuminating the importance of the CFPB and government standing on the side of veterans in the face of these predators. I'm going to start the questioning with Senator Reid, who's chair of the Armed Services Committee and has been a leader on many of these issues for 30 years. Go for it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's very gracious. I appreciate it. I had the privilege of being an executive officer and a company commander in a parachute battalion many decades ago, and I was operating under the Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act of 1918. As the chairman's pointed out, we've made some progress since then and made the laws a little bit better. But one thing I discovered is that soldiers and sailors and military members and their families are often the target of predatory lenders and predatory retailers. That it's not a coincidence. They're going after them, and they need special protections because of their status. They move frequently. One member could be deployed, the other member could be home. It's a different life than hometown USA. So I appreciate what you're doing and what we have to do. In fact, we have to do more. Mr. Titus, the annual report of the CFPB indicated that complaints related to instant payment apps like Zelle are higher for military personnel than the civilian population. And can you comment on how instant payment apps have caused harm to service members and what CFPB and Congress can do?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And these are new technologies, and anytime we introduce them, there's always a period of time where we're figuring out how they're going to be implemented and used. And these are incredibly useful and helpful for service members, given how much transient they are. But when it comes down to having the resolution and support to fix problems when they arise, we aren't seeing that when it comes to some of these peer-to-peer apps. And that's putting service members especially in a really tough situation because we want them focused on the mission, doing their job. And when resolutions are taking too long or they can't even get to a person to talk to try to resolve something that is putting them in a really tough financial situation, that's extremely frustrating for a service member. And that's something that we want to see addressed. So there's very limited understanding within these companies about just the unique challenges that service members are facing. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve that level of outreach, and also in regards to the safety and security of these products, because as has been mentioned, the risk of identity theft for our population is higher than most Americans.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Ms. Ruska, in terms of, as Mr. Titus suggested, there are so many new electronic products on the market. Now we've got buy now, pay later programs. We have earned wage access programs, et cetera. This is another area in which service members can be either wittingly or unwittingly sort of trapped. Can you comment upon the effect of these new features on service members?
Thank you, Senator. As the financial markets and the ability to pay change, I think laws and protections are slow to keep up. And so I think that is one of the advantages of CFPB, that they're able to identify the problems relatively early or much earlier than we would otherwise, and then we can all work to find solutions to address them.
Well, thank you very much. I think you really indicated something that's critical. That's the CFPB. And we deliberately created within the CFPB an Office of Service Members Affairs. I believe it's the only agency in the federal government that is designed to protect service members as consumers. And as Mr. Titus indicated, a case is before the Supreme Court now in which payday lenders and their collaborators are suing on the constitutionality of that. Mr. Titus, if the CFPB was put out of business, would that dramatically harm the ability of service members to get their legal rights?
Absolutely, Senator. The thought of them going away is frightening.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And the point Ms. Ruska said, too, is that CFPB not only is enforcing, but they're also monitoring what's going on. They're looking at the new technologies. They're trying to figure out how it affects existing law for service members. And then they're taking very, very adequate steps. And an ounce of prevention is really terrific, because if someone can get away with something, then they'll have a lot of imitators. If they're caught doing it very early, then hopefully everyone else gets the lesson. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Ms. Simpson, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Reed. Senator Rounds is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thanks for being here today. When I first looked at what the title of our hearing today would be, ensuring financial protection for service members, veterans, and their families. A number of things came to mind. My first thought is we talk about financial protection for service members and veterans. We assume that we have a process in place to where the Department of Defense is providing adequate remuneration to our service members and housing is available. We assume that once they have left the service of our country, we have the VA, which is there to help protect. And yet, a huge amount of the service work that we do within our offices is for our veterans on the benefits that they are entitled to. And Mr. Titus, I see you nodding in agreement. I just want to I want your thoughts on this. It seems to me that the discussions that we've all had here have been about protecting our veterans and our service members from activities of outside financial organizations. But who's responsible? How do we go about making sure that the benefits that our service members and our veterans are entitled to from DOD and from the Veterans Administration, that those are properly reimbursed? Do you get involved in that at all?
I mean, to answer your question, Senator, I think this is something that is the whole of community approach that we need to be taking with this. Yes, things fall with the DOD and VA, but it's the responsibility of every federal administration, department and agency.
But does your organization get involved at all in trying to find a path forward for those folks that are trying to get those benefits that they've earned?
So we don't do claims in the traditional sense that some of the other.
I wasn't sure if you did or not, but Ms. Dinesh, do you find when you're working, does your association, when they're working with veterans, do you find that many of them are concerned about trying to pick up the benefits that they are entitled to that they've had a tough time getting?
So thank you for your question. I appreciate that. With our program that we run with the Veterans Benefits Banking Program, along with the VA, one of the main parts of that is to be providing financial education, support, benefits, and also connecting them to the VA in the specific ways that they need their support. So whether that's claims or otherwise, we do that through that program.
Do you find a demand for that service?
I think that we've heard just anecdotally from the counselors in the program that they sometimes receive questions about claims. They're usually turning them right back to the VA and helping them know where to go for that information.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
Ms. Ruska, same question again. Veterans coming in and they're looking, whether they're veterans or members of the military right now, trying to receive the benefits that they have earned and so forth. Does your organization work at all with those veterans or those individuals?
We don't work in the claims processing area, but when we do get questions, we do refer them to the VA, a qualified VSO, and CFPB if they're having financial challenges.
You know, in a case like that, where you have a veteran who is being denied benefits by the VA, CFPB ever get involved in that?
You know, Senator, I don't know.
I wonder, anybody else know?
It's a good question.
I mean, my question is we've got challenges right now. We hear about them all the time where folks are asking for benefits that we would expect that they would be provided. Never heard of CFPB ever being involved in trying to obtain any of those from the VA or from DOD. Correct?
Senator, this is where the VSOs often come in and provide claim support. So while MOAA doesn't do claims, we do offer benefits.
You make a really good point there. The VSOs provide that service. Isn't it interesting? I happen to have a veteran service officer in South Dakota where we have over 70 separate veterans right now that have received assistance from private entities that have been trying to get benefits from the VA. And you know what? Some of those 70 are actually the veteran service officers themselves who have gone outside to try to get assistance from outside organizations to get the benefits that they are entitled to. That tells me that not only should we be looking at organizations outside, But we should absolutely be looking at why, with the VA and sometimes with DOD, that we're not providing the services that these individuals are entitled to receive. And I make the point only because it sounds really good to say that private enterprise is not treating our veterans with care or that they're not treating them fairly. But in a lot of cases, my opinion, we need to cut through the bureaucratic red tape at the federal level and make it easier for these veterans to actually receive the benefits that they have earned, that they have not been able to easily or readily get through the existing corridors, if you will, that they're looking for to get it. And I think that's got to be a part of the discussion as we move forward. And I don't think we've done a very good job of answering that question so far. But thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. I'll defer my questioning to Senator Tester, Chair of the Senate Veterans Committee. Senator Tester.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the hospitality, and thank you and Ranking Member Scott Rounds for having this this hearing, and thanks for the folks who are testifying. I think, to follow up on Senator Rounds' question, I think that's one of the reasons we passed the PACT Act, was to make sure the veterans got the benefits they've and the health care that they have earned. I've got a question, and any one of you can answer it. There's a bunch of alphabet soup agencies out there that have 3 or 4 initials in their title. When it comes to stopping the crooks, the folks who are lower than rats from stealing benefits and money from both our military and our veterans, which is it the CFPB? Is it the FDC? Which one's doing the best job?
From most perspectives, Senator, they're all doing a great job, and they all have their own focus areas. And I think the collaboration between all these groups is critical. A good space where we've seen that begin to happen is the VSafe program through VA.
Okay. Anybody else like to respond to that? Go ahead.
I would agree. The working relationship between the federal agencies, but also with the private sector and all the organizations that are out there supporting our military and veterans, the more we can all work together in a holistic approach, I think is the way forward.
Okay. Ms. Ruska?
I would agree. It is. I think it just takes that net. There may be some redundancy, but that redundancy is good because it creates checks and balances.
Okay, very good. I don't know if any of you can answer this question, so I'm going to ask it. And that is that we have military people who get taken advantage of financially. Anytime you got a steady flow of money coming, it seems like that kind of is a magnet for folks who have best intentions and not the best intentions, by the way. Do we see cases more prevalent in active military or in veterans, or do you know? Go ahead.
I haven't seen any data to compare military versus veterans, Senator, but we know, active duty military versus the civilian population and veterans versus civilian populations. The rate of this level of targeting is greater versus than average civilians.
Okay. Anybody else want to respond to that? No? Okay. So, from your guys' experience, how is the exploitation being done? Is it being done by planned groups that are out there that their only reason for existence is to try to take people's money? Or is these one-offs? Is it happening in our traditional banking system? Where is it happening? Who's doing the exploitation?
We're starting to see a broader level of organization when it comes to it. A good example is the Claim Shark, Senator, and the efforts there that have really picked up since the PACT Act. And speaking specifically to that, I think that's a good example of when something's illegal on the books, but there's no enforcement mechanism. They run rampant.
So what you're saying is these folks can take advantage of either active military or veterans, and there's no consequences?
No, Senator. We have organizations like the CFPB, FTC, and all the other ones doing consumer protection, but there are gaps, and it's a cat and mouse game that we constantly need to follow and remain vigilant.
So we met, I met with, along with some other folks, with some VSOs yesterday, and this was very high on their list. Taking advantage of their veterans is not something that happens rarely. It happens more often than any of us care to admit. Is there anything that Congress needs to do from an enforcement standpoint to hold the crooks more accountable than what they're being held right now? Anybody can answer. Go ahead.
I would highlight the Guard VA Benefits Act, Senator.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good bill that we support heartily, and I would just ask that we've got 3 great organizations that are setting up here today, and I thank you for being here today, and continue to advocate for things that can make a difference, and get your fellow veteran service organizations out there, those of you that are connected with VSOs, to do the same. It can make a huge difference. Thank you all very much.
Senator Vance from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for hosting the committee, and thanks to the 3 of you for being here. These are issues I know very well personally. I myself was a veteran with a lot to learn in terms of financial literacy, and I very much benefited from credit unions and senior officials within the military helping me navigate some early decisions. Because of that, things worked out pretty well for me. So I appreciate what you guys do, and appreciate the topic getting some attention here. I want to start with Miss Dynison. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. But could you just briefly walk me through the VA's Home Loan Guarantee Program? Like, what is it? How does it work?
To be honest with you, this is not I appreciate your question. This is not something that AMBA works really closely to. Our member banks do, but this is not something that I am wholly aware of, other than my own personal experience with using the VA home loan benefit.
Sure.
So walking you through it and the concepts of that, I think, would be a little bit difficult for me.
Well, here's understand that. I appreciate that. Here's what I'm trying to get at. So we obviously are entering, or have entered, a period of very, very high interest rates. And I think about somebody who, and I know you yourself, as you just said, have benefited from the VA home loan program. So have I. And 4 or 5 years ago, somebody gets a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at an interest rate of around 3%. Now interest rates are north of 7%, I believe. Does it make sense to refinance your mortgage right now if you've got a fixed rate 3%? Would it be a good idea to refinance when rates are above 7%?
Honestly, I would ask anyone in that situation to meet with a financial professional, like
Sure.
with their bank or credit union, a financial counselor, a financial professional, to look at their entire financial picture before deciding whether that makes sense for them or not, even in higher interest rate environment.
So appreciate that, and every case is different, of course. But my instinct is that refinancing in a much higher interest rate environment is usually not going to be a good decision for most veterans. And that leads me to a topic that this committee has tried to tackle in the past, and something sort of my office is looking at right now, which is what's known as refinancing insurance, sort of serial refinancing. Obviously, occasionally predatory refinancing that happens in the case of some of these veterans' home loans. So, Mr. Titus, could you speak to the types of solicitations that veterans are getting in environments like this? What are they actually being asked? What are they being encouraged to do? And how does it affect them?
Thank you, Senator. And this is something that is a constant problem, and it goes through ebbs and flows as interest rates change, as you mentioned. And I live near the Pentagon, and you could walk along the street and just see yard signs advertising to service members as they're on their way in,
Sure.
in addition to mailing all sorts of information to them, as well as ads following them online. It's a variety of tactics, and it is persistent.
So when you think about this, who are the veterans that are being most targeted with these refinancing schemes? I mean, is it people who might be cash strapped in a short-term way, but are invited to sort of refinance in a predatory way? Is it, is it somebody else? Like, what's the category of veteran that is most targeted by some of these schemes?
I don't have any information as to who's being targeted, but I think if a service member is in a tough financial situation or a veteran is, and they may look to refinance, so would be the people that are more likely to pursue something like that.
Got it. So, Ms. Ruska, let me just ask this final question to you. I'm mindful of the limited amount of time that I have. Knowing what military families are dealing with and that we currently lack protections for some of these mortgages, do you think plugging this loophole, adding adjustable rate fixed mortgages to ensure that veterans are protected from these predatory schemes would actually benefit veterans, or do you think it's the sort of thing that wouldn't help?
I definitely think it would help. You want to make sure that military families and veteran families have access to the same products and services that their civilian counterparts do.
Yeah. Okay. Mindful of my time, I'll yield back. Thanks to all of you.
Thanks, Senator Vance. Mr. Titus and Ms. Ruska, you refer service members, veterans, and their families that come to your organization for help, I know, with consumer financial issues, to the CFPB because it understands, perhaps better than anyone, the complicated financial landscape and because it acts quickly. To both of you, and answer as short as you can, please, what would it mean to service members, veterans, and their families if CFPB were gutted? Mr. Titus.
Like I said before, Senator, it's frightening, and we're going to see an increase in them going after service members, veterans, and their families.
Ms. Ruska.
I would agree. It would be frightening.
Thank you. I thought it was so telling. A number of you have talked about outside of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base or other major Air Force bases, the number of fly-by-night financiers, if you will, that were there, and that number shrunk with the interest cap. And from your question or answer, Ms. Titus, it sounded like that number would go up again if that happened. Second question. Service members, has been pointed out by witnesses, report more cases of identity theft than other types of consumers. It's why credit monitoring is so important for service members. And credit monitoring, for example, will alert active duty members of material changes to their report. Mr. Titus, do active duty military always get the free services from the credit reporting agencies that they're entitled to?
They are eligible for free credit monitoring. They do not always get it, Senator.
Do you have any idea of any percentages or roughly?
I haven't seen any data on that, Senator, but I think this is something we should be striving for all service members to be using these free monitoring.
Certainly many don't then.
Absolutely.
Credit reporting agencies clearly need to do more. We brought them, first time ever in front of this committee, we brought the three major agencies here. We will, next time they're here, really pin them down on these issues. They need to do more to ensure service members get the benefits they're entitled to. Just last month, CFPB, again, the agency that could step up here, fined TransUnion when it failed to place or remove credit freezes in a timely manner for service members. Congress and the CFPB will continue to hold these private members. This committee will, and CFPB, to hold them accountable. Last longer question. According to CFPB, failure to invoke CICRA reduced rates cost service members $100 million over the last decade. Mr. Titus, currently do most financial institutions automatically apply CICRA interest rate reductions for all accounts, mortgages, auto loans, credit cards? Do they apply CICRA interest rate reductions for all accounts for service members?
No, Senator.
They simply don't apply it even though it's the law?
Yes, Senator.
If creditors, you want to comment on that, Ms. Ruska?
No, sir.
Okay. If creditors proactively checked to identify accounts service members had with their institutions, would more service members therefore get interest rate reductions and save money?
Yes.
Okay. Any comment on that?
We should be making it as easy as possible for service members to get their benefits and protections. When a service member is being called up and activated, they have a lot on their minds. They're worried about making sure their family's taken care of. They're worried about the mission that they're about to do. And doing bureaucratic paperwork to get their CICRA interest rate reductions is important, but it goes along with a whole list of other responsibilities that they're trying to take care of, Senator. So as easy as we can make it for them, that's what we should be striving to do.
Senator Rounds was right in his opening statement when he talked about the importance of financial literacy. But I think that is right as he was, that falls short of enforcement of the law and making sure that these service members and these veterans and their families have a way in a very busy life. My wife's a writer, and she talks about the daily mess of life. And we all face that. People that are financially strapped or trying to make all these. I mean, the military's never been particularly good at helping in that transition from active duty to veteran status, whether it's connecting with the VA, whether it's financial transactions they are about to make, all of those things. So we know that there's so much to do there. 2 credit card issuers proactively check, at least 2, proactively check to identify accounts that are eligible for SICRA reductions. I'm going to work towards ensuring that all financial institutions check for SICRA reductions, and service members and families deserve nothing less. The testimony of all 3 of you have helped to make that case. Thank you. Senator Britt of Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. As we head into Veterans Day next week, it is especially fitting that we have this hearing today. It is crucial that we stand up for our incredible veterans, servicemen and women, and military families, now and always. Despite the strength and dedication of our military, both here and abroad, the ongoing events in the Middle East are unfortunately a stark reminder that there is evil in this world. Iranian proxies have only continued in their attacks following the atrocities committed by Hamas terrorists on October 7th, including targeted attacks on U.S. military bases and personnel, like we've seen in Iraq and Syria. We must put maximum pressure sanctions on terrorist organizations and their benefactors that are threatening U.S. citizens, our troops, our allies, and regional stability. I hope we will see the Treasury Secretary before this committee in order to discuss these issues and ask important questions. To the more than 40,000 U.S. troops based in the Middle East and the hundreds of thousands of additional active duty servicemen and women, their families stationed across the globe, and to the millions of veterans in every single state, we say thank you. We owe you an eternal debt of gratitude that can never be repaid. Our military personnel are the best our country has to offer, and it is imperative that our country is giving them the best in return. There is no doubt that certain aspects of military service can make personal financial management more challenging. Fortunately, we have many financial institutions and organizations, including those in Alabama, with a specific mission for providing financial products and services that are tailored to the unique needs of servicemen and women, veterans, and their families. This includes financial education and counseling of all stages, from an 18-year-old who is entering the service and wanting to open up a bank account, to veterans seeking to enter the workforce, to the spouse and family of active duty members. Mrs. Dyenson, and is that how you say it? Okay, excellent. Can you elaborate on this, and what do these tailored services look like, and how can we ensure servicemen and women and their families are aware that these resources exist?
Thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it. So service members and their families can access financial education, tools, and resources at their banks and credit unions, as you pointed out. They can also reach a financial counselor on their military installation at their family readiness office and through Military OneSource. As I mentioned, veterans, beneficiaries, and caregivers can also access a free session of financial or credit counseling through the Veterans Benefits Banking Program that we partner on with the VA. And in addition, our newly designed VetSense education program, which is launching next week for Veterans Day, which will help provide a tailored experience for veterans and their families to be able to get the financial tools and resources that they need.
Excellent, and thank you. I think it's so important that we enable and empower these servicemen and women and their families, and also get the word out. So I appreciate that. It's these types of tailored benefits that help to cultivate a positive experience for them as they're serving our country. Also, can you tell us a little bit about, as we think about educating and encouraging the next generation on opportunities to serve this great nation, given your experience as a military spouse, what do you see as the biggest obstacle to military recruitment?
I think representing my organization, the Association of Military Banks of America, it's hard for us to have a position on that at this time. I would probably want to confer with my members and get back to you on that. I have some personal thoughts on that, but I'll leave that maybe for another time. But I do think as we continue to support the public-private partnership and really letting all Americans know what it is and what military service means, I think is very important.
And does anyone else have anything to offer as you see some of the challenges that military families have and entering into service that we should be aware of? I'd be happy to hear if you could.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I think it's ultimately just like with the financial education protections, it takes a whole of community approach, and it's government working together with all of our partners to make sure that happens. And really highlighting the positive stories and how service has changed your life. I certainly wouldn't be here without my Army background getting me here.
And thank you so much for your service. Yes, ma'am, do you have anything?
I think I would add, highlighting those positive stories.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to add as a resource are the service relief societies.
Okay.
They can be a valuable resource, especially for budgeting.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here today.
Thanks, Senator Brett. Senator Menendez of New Jersey is recognized.
Members of the military and their families face a unique set of financial challenges, including difficulty making payments while on deployment and other issues that can impact their credit. Thankfully, the CFPB's Office of Service Member Affairs serves as a first line of defense by helping to empower and educate service members and their families and coordinating efforts to monitor complaints and implement consumer protection measures related to financial products these families rely on. According to the CFPB's most recent annual report on financial concerns of service members, veterans, and military families, in 2022 alone, these consumers submitted over 66,000 complaints on a variety of issues, from credit reporting to scams on payment applications. So I heard your response to the chairman about if there's no CFPB. Clearly, that would negatively impact on their access to financial products. But who would service members and their families turn to for assistance in these matters in the absence of an entity like the CFPB?
I'll go first. I think that the service members and their families would reach out to DOD in the absence of a CFPB. I think they would reach out to more veterans and military service organizations. I mean, even now with CFPB, we get lots of questions, and we hear from families about complaints, and then we refer families to CFPB so that they can register those complaints and talk with someone in the Office of Service
And the final analysis, it ends up at CFPB for most of the time. Without a CFPB, then there's a vacuum.
Exactly, Senator. There wouldn't be that forcing mechanism. They can come to us and we can do our best to help, but we don't have the power of government.
Members of the military aren't the only ones making sacrifices for our country. Their families also bear a burden. Spouses are left to figure out how to cope with long deployments and frequent moves. These moves present military spouses with challenges in advancing their own careers. Regular changes of station force spouses to seek new jobs and to create additional complications in professions that require licensing. Ms. Risco, to what extent are the Department of Defense policies effective in helping military spouses overcome obstacles to finding meaningful employment?
The Department of Defense has been very responsive in terms of trying to help military spouses with employment opportunities, and Congress has been responsive as well. But military spouse unemployment has been persistently high for almost a decade, and I think we just need better research to understand why and exactly what is the military spouse unemployment rate.
Is that something that the Department of Defense could conduct that research to understand how to better help military spouses, couldn't they?
Actually, we've asked the Department of Labor if they could do something similar to what they've done with veterans and determining the veteran military spouse unemployment rate. No, we're still working to figure out how to get that done.
That's something we need to help you with, because we need to understand how we achieve a greater success. According to HUD, this committee also has jurisdiction over housing. Over 30,000 veterans are experiencing homelessness. No one should be without a home, let alone those who answer the call to serve their country. A key element of helping our veterans needs to be through supportive housing or housing paired with supportive services such as treatment for health conditions or substance use disorders. These services are critical as they help ensure people are able to stay in their homes and provide resources to deal with conditions that makes it harder for them to do so. Mr. Titus, what more can Congress be doing to enhance preventive services like mental health counseling, financial counseling, and other services to prevent homelessness from happening in the first place?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And it starts early. It starts as they're transitioning out of uniform, making sure that we're building those effective bridges as they go from DOD to Care VA, and getting things like making sure they have their disability connection. They're tied into the VA healthcare system, and they know what all their benefits are. And that's the best thing we can do, to start them early. And then as they begin to face challenges, having that constant relationship, not only with VA, but with VSOs and local organizations. We need to have that holistic approach. We need to have that web of services for them, Senator.
This is an area that I would hope that we could do some bipartisan legislation to effectuate that. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thanks, Senator Menendez. Senator Warren from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So over 100 million Americans, nearly 1 in every 3 adults, struggle with unpaid medical bills. You know, these bills are often confusing. They're often filled with errors. Sorting out what is owed means bouncing between insurance companies and healthcare providers and navigating endless disputes where everybody points somewhere else. This process can also wreck people's credit scores. It can ruin the ability of someone to be able to buy a home or rent an apartment, purchase a car, start a small business. Now, we know that service members are also suffering from medical debt. Last year, the CFPB said it received over 5,000 complaints about medical bills from service members and their families over a 3-year period. More than half of those complaints were about collection attempts for bills that the service members didn't actually owe. Now, Ms. Ruska, most service members and their families have high-quality insurance coverage through TRICARE, meaning they shouldn't even be billed for most health care services. So where is this debt coming from?
Well, Senator, it's a great question. Emergency medical situations, specialized health care, are all possible causes of medical debt for military families. Another challenge is TRICARE is slow to pay. So in many cases, the charges are referred to debt collection before TRICARE pays, and then once referred to debt collection, the families are dealing with the debt collector and not with the physician.
So in other words, what you're telling me is that the service member's getting dinged, not for anything they did wrong, but because the information is inaccurate here. Is that right? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, Senator.
You know, and we know also that reports on a credit report of medical debt are not a good indication of whether or not someone is actually creditworthy and actually tries to pay their bills, because, in fact, there are so many errors in this. So the CFPB's complaint database is filled with messages from service members in South Carolina and Florida and Alabama and North Dakota and Tennessee who have dealt with surprise unpaid balances or bills that were sent to wrong addresses. But in order to get our arms around this, we got to have more than just anecdotes, people who identify themselves in the complaint database. Last year, the CFPB recommended that DOD collect better information on service member medical debt. But after I wrote DOD in March to check on their progress, see how they were coming on that, they told me they had not taken any action at all. We need robust information to understand the ways in which TRICARE comes up short. But we don't just need data on medical debt, we also need action. Ms. Ruska, you discussed the CFPB's recently proposed rule to remove medical debt from credit reports. Will this help service members and their families as well?
Definitely, Senator. It's important, and it will also help CFPB and the Department of Defense collect more data.
Good. This is what CFPB does best. It identifies a problem that affects thousands, sometimes millions of people, and then it takes direct action. In this case, I am very glad to see the agency step up so that there is someone on the side of our service members when they get tangled up with medical billing errors or bad credit reports or endless fights with insurance companies. And I particularly appreciate Vice President Harris's leadership on this issue. This step by the Biden administration will help service members, veterans, and their families, as well as millions of Americans all across the country. So thank you, and thank you again for being with us today.
Thanks, Senator Warren. Senator Van Hollen of Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for your testimony today. And I want to start by just seconding what Senator Warren just talked about with respect to medical debt. The CFPB's proposal they issued in September to not carry that debt on people's credit reports would go a long way for veterans and military families and others as well. And I'm pleased to join with Senator Merkley and others to introduce legislation to accomplish that goal as well. The other theme of the hearing, of course, is CFPB plays a really important role in enforcing the Military Families Act. One of the things many of us would like to do is to extend those protections from the Military Families Act to veterans and Gold Star families, meaning the 35% cap, because right now they're not protected. I am pleased that in the state of Maryland we have a 25% cap. There are constant efforts to try to do an end run around those. I was pleased to team up with the chairman, Senator Brown, and others to thwart a Trump administration proposal that would allow what we call rent-a-banks that would essentially do end runs around the state caps. But if you could please talk a little bit, Mr. Titus, about what you mentioned in your opening testimony about how veterans, especially, who have a access to security clearances because of their service, are often denied their ability to actually get those security clearances because of the debt that is being reported, and how providing them with the same protection that we provide military families would be useful.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And the Military Lending Act has been incredibly successful. It virtually eliminated the challenges of getting into the debt trap that we have seen face service members. And MOAA believes that when there's good policy that is working, we should look to expand it. We're gravely concerned about veterans, survivors, and making sure that they enjoy the same protections they had when their service member was on active duty, as well as the reserve component. And we think it's vital to make sure that when they're trying to maintain a security and continue their job, that they have a way to do that and have some of those protections. So we shouldn't be stopping with just the active component when we have some bright spot of how things are.
Right. I think many of us have observed the benefits of the military protections and want to extend those to veterans, to Gold Star families, and to others throughout the population. Ms. Ruska, if you could speak a little bit to that issue as well, because the CFPB is playing the critical role that we heard today in terms of current enforcement and also the steps we discussed with respect to medical debt, which I know you mentioned. But could you also talk about the benefits of extending these protections to veterans and Gold Star families and others?
Yes, Senator. I work a lot with surviving family members, and they when the service member passes away, Gold Star surviving family members basically have targets on their backs because many predatory lenders know that they are receiving the death gratuity and SGLI and other benefits. And so I think it's important to protect those families, especially when they are at their most vulnerable.
Right, and there's been a lot of discussion of financial literacy, which I think is important. I'm a huge supporter of trying to make sure that we extend family literacy opportunities broadly. But in your experience, take with military families, would that be sufficient if we didn't have the Military Families Protection Act?
Well, we need the Military Lending Act to help protect families as they go through their military life. And if it were to, we need people to enforce that the MLA, and that's where CFPB comes into play.
Right, and you would agree, Mr. Titus, that financial literacy programs are very important, but they're not sufficient for protection. In other words, that's why we still need the Military Lending Protection Act.
Absolutely, Senator. Need to educate and you need to regulate and enforce.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. I heard there's a member coming, but I also hear that, there are votes on the Senate floor, so the witnesses for your testimony, for senators who wish to submit questions. For the record, those questions are due 1 week from today, Thursday, November 9th. To the witnesses, please submit your responses to questions, for the record, 45 days from the day you received them. With that, the hearing's adjourned.